I'm not going to belabor the point. I think that the point has certainly been very well made by Senator Butler and Pedro Marin, Representative Marin. They've done a great job. I certainly, as one who supported this legislation in 2004, I certainly look forward to supporting it in 2010, as I think it ought to be said that I, for one, am pro-law enforcement. Now, for those of you who are uninformed may say, how can you be pro-law enforcement and pro or anti-racial profiling? I think that if this legislation were to become law, it would enhance the ability of law enforcement to do their job. Certainly it would be respected more. As Senator Butler mentioned, you know, if a crime was committed and it was said that it was committed by a handsome African-American wearing a blue suit and I was stopped, that would not be racial profiling. Racial profiling is if I'm walking down the street and for no other reason but because of my race, my creed, my color, I am stopped and investigated. I look forward to voting on this legislation this session. My name is Billy Mitchell. I represent the 88th Legislative District of Stone Mountain. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gonzalo James, and I'm a state senator from the 35th District. Yes, thank you. Many years ago, I also served in this same position. And during my first tenure as state senator, Mark Bell did come to me and he talked to me about racial profiling. But it was nothing new to me because my own teenage son, a year prior to that, had and he was a youth minister, had left his church and had one friend with him. They were dressed, Billy, in shirt and tie and looking very nice. But they pulled into a McDonald's in Union City. And he called me about an hour later because he was detained after he was trying to pull out after eating a hamburger, pulling out. And the Union City police stopped my son. And I wondered, he said he didn't know what it was for. They put him on the ground. They patted him down. They wanted to know why was he in a luxury car and why was he dressed up. He was in his family car. And unfortunately, just because he was black, he was detained for 1 hour. So when Mark Bell came to me and told me about what was happening in Cobb County, I introduced legislation. It didn't go very far. It did go through the Senate at that time, but it didn't go any further. And I was so happy to know when Senator Butler came and she was having the same problem in her area, she reintroduced it and I was happy to sign on with her. We got it through the House and the Senate, but it was two different versions and it died on the last day. But I want you to know that I'm going to fight hard now that I'm back and it's reintroduced because this problem still exists. And Senator Butler and all of my colleagues who have already signed on to it, who are fighting for it, I want you to know you have another soldier fighting with you. Thank you.
I'm Senator Nan Orrock, representing Atlanta citizens here at the Georgia State Senate. I am proudly a signer of the racial profiling bill in the Senate, joining Senator Gloria Butler and others of my colleagues in pushing for this policy to become the law of Georgia. I was a signer as well in the House of Representative Pedro Marin's bill in 2004. It is past time for Georgia to step into the 21st century. Georgia has a proud legacy. Georgia is the cradle of the civil rights movement. People have fought long and hard across this state and across the South against the overt Jim Crow policies and segregation that has plagued our region and our nation for centuries. The battle is still not won. The bills we are introducing in the House and Senate to prohibit racial profiling are yet another chapter in the long, long history of fighting to make the U.S. Constitution truly mean something every day on the ground, in the streets, for ordinary citizens, no matter their color, their race, their creed, or their ethnicity. So these bills are critically important bills. I was privileged to participate in a statewide meeting of Black and Latino leaders who got together to identify the commonalities of their living here in Georgia. And there were two things that rose to the top of the list: quality education for all and stopping racial profiling. Anyone who looks different in Georgia can tell you, and you've heard everyone who stood up here share a story of racial profiling that happened in these days and this time in the cities and towns of Georgia. My son, who is white, has told me numerous stories of being stopped because he's riding with black kids, a teenager, that black teens getting routinely stopped on the streets of Atlanta and subjected to abusive behavior, threatening behaviors, and with racial epithets included. I know personally from my own son, who has described to me and has been appalled at the way young African American and Latino teenagers have been, the treatment they've been subjected to here in Atlanta. We know this is not the intent of the leadership of Atlanta. We hope it's not the intent of the leadership of Georgia, and we know that there are good, strong, solid leadership people in our law enforcement ranks. We need to set the standard and make it crystal clear that in Georgia, racial profiling is not going to be tolerated. That's simply the impact of this bill. And we call on our leaders at the state, county, city level. We call on our leaders to get behind this effort, because that will be the best reflection of who we are in Georgia and where we aspire to go as a state. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the organizations that are working for this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm State Representative Stephanie Stuckey Benfield. I will be brief because I am cold. I don't have any personal racial profiling stories to share, but that may be because I look the way I look. But I just want to say that I stand here in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in the House and the Senate. I've signed on to the racial profiling bill this session and in many previous sessions, and I hope that this is the year that we'll finally pass some meaningful legislation. Thank you.
It was August 28, 1963 that at the famous March on Washington that Dr. King stated that he has a dream of America that judges people based on the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. I am Gregory Williams, president of ABLE. It's a shame that 40 years plus later, we're still on Capitol steps, fighting for people of color to not be judged by their race. It's a shame that we can't pass legislation that's going to allow Latinos, African Americans, and other people of color to live in a country, in a state that judges us only by our character of courage. It's a shame. It's a shame that we still have to fight. We still have to stand. We still have to work in a country, in a state that only looks at me because of the pigmentation of my skin. I know about racial profiling. It was when I was a college student that I was on Campbellton Road riding at 10 o'clock at night, and I was pulled over leaving Bible study, leaving church. And I was pulled over because I gave a homeless man a quarter at a red light on Campbellton Road. 3 hours later, I was calling my father, who's here today, calling my father from Atlanta Detention Center saying, I've been arrested. My dad had to walk to the precinct, and he had to go to the captain and make him walk me back out of that jail and back home safely. I know racial profiling. It's time now. It's our time. It's our time. It's our time. It's time for us to work. It's time for us to fight. What are the actions? The action is to call our legislators, call them on the phone, and tell them to support this legislation. It's time to talk and tell your friends and neighbors to call your legislation all over the state of Georgia and tell them to vote in favor of this legislation. We will be at David Scott's office on next week at a prayer vigil, February the 3rd at 12:30, getting him to support immigration rights. It's our time. If not us, who? If not here, where? If not now, when? Thank you.